So be back before the NDEs. I have to actually go back it up even further. As a child, I had suffered twin strikes of pretty intense trauma. One was from my mom, and my mom had her own problems, I think, from her childhood abuse that she didn't couldn't deal with. In Montana in the 60s, when I was born, there wasn't a lot of thought about taking care of mental health or soul health or transformational healing. It's pretty much you just toughed up and got by. And so instead of dealing with her troubles, she drank alcohol to self-medicate. And I was the oldest daughter, so I became the repository of most of her pain. And also, I was sexually abused at the age of 5. So a lot of my trauma happened before I could talk. I've been listening a lot lately to Jung. They put Carl Jung's teachings online so you can hear them. I find it just soul soothing. But it's like I feel like he's talking directly to me. And when he talks about empaths, how they bear the burden of others, and it starts out really early. And so I can really relate to that. And for me, I decided I didn't really want to hurt anybody. So I took all the pain and I turned it inward. So it hurt me. So I had, growing up in the breaks is a term for rough country in Montana. We think of the mountains and how beautiful it is, but in the breaks you can see mountains off in the background. But in the foreground, it's really rugged country because the water has worn pathways to the major river. But these crevices and things that go down in the earth are like hundreds of feet. So it's really, really rough country that you can see from here to there, but it may take you an hour or two to get there because you have to go around the rough country that goes down, not up. And I often ponder if that was kind of the framework for me to get used to the deep caverns and crevices that were created in my subconscious. So I grew up there, but I had heaven on earth too because I loved horses. And I always have talked to God. I've always had a spiritual path. It wasn't something I learned on the outer. It was my saving grace. When I was out with horses, I talked to God. So I had heaven and earth as a childhood. And the way that I got by is I became very aware of anything that would happen around my mom because I'm trying to stay alive. And it was legitimate. One time she actually choked me because I couldn't find my shoes. And she was shaking me and I was starting to get, kind of blacking out. And the interesting thing is I remember I didn't even fight. So that means I knew at that time that the fight would make it worse. And she dropped me because she realized that she could kill me. And she left me. And I don't want you to think my mom was all bad. She is like many of us. She had many good parts and many bad parts. It just so happened I drew the bad parts as my mom because of being the older daughter. And I imagine I was a bit precocious and not necessarily that manageable. So all of that led to a really intense childhood. I built on that childhood by deciding I would succeed. I would give everything to succeed in sports, in Future Farmers of America, speaking contests, everything I could. So I was very, very dedicated to achieving goals. And by doing that, I never had to slow down to feel. I became an overachiever. I was actually a state champion in 2 sports the same year. I competed on the national level in rodeo. In college, I played 2 varsity sports, basketball and rodeo. And I was a pre-vet, pre-med major. So that just gives you an idea of the intensity that I had to drive myself. And yes, it was striving for excellence, but more than anything, it was never slowing down because I did not want to feel, because I was sure it would kill me. Then I went to journalism school and I covered Congress as a journalist. And then after I was covering the Supreme Court case, I decided that I wanted to actually be an attorney. So I went back and went to law school, and I've been an attorney for 30 years, and I'm a litigation attorney. Now, a litigation attorney is perfect for having to overwork, give everything you have to succeed, and to never stop to feel. And for that tough girl part that I developed as a cowgirl. So that was my outer persona, and it was working well for me until 10 years ago. And at that time, I'd been in the profession for 30 years, and all of a sudden, it was a whole year-long illness, but I kept on getting pericarditis, which is inflammation around my heart. And by the time Christmas came around, I was hospitalized. It was the 3rd time I was hospitalized, and it was hospitalized for, 5 or 6 days. And I wasn't in intensive care, but I wasn't on the regular floor. And I had my CRP, which is a measurement of inflammation. They get nervous if it's 7. Mine was 197. So the inflammation around my heart and lungs, which I also had pneumonia and pleuritis, was extraordinary, off the charts. And I had extreme amount of pain. I mean, my teeth fillings hurt, everything hurt. And I'm laying there in the hospital bed. I'm not intubated, but I am on oxygen. And people around me had coded and died, and I'd witnessed that. One was right across the hall. The other one, I seemed to have an out-of-body experience because I saw the whole thing and it was several doors down. So that was kind of odd. And I was laying there talking to God. It's like, I could die. It's like, well, yes, you could. And I'm like, well, I don't really like it here. It's been a shit show. And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't talk to God that way. And I felt bad, but I kept on in the conversation. And I realized I kind of laughed at myself because I didn't think about all those things I won. The saddles I won, the state championships, the cases I won, the money I made, the struggles. I didn't think of any of that. I didn't think about growing up with the wounds of my mom or the childhood abuse. All I thought about was love, God, my husband, my pets, everything that had to do with me, that had to do with love. And I start kind of just going in this version of love, and pretty soon I'm just leaving my body, and I go up, 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 and this gold shimmery tube of light. It was greater than one can imagine. I couldn't even, when we're out of our body, at least for me, there was no time or space. And this tube of light is endless. It is forever. And the feeling of absolute peace, harmony, love, worthiness, was out of this world, more than I could imagine ever feeling in the physical form. And I'm up, going up, up, up in this light. And I feel like a little 4-year-old running to my heavenly parents' lap. I feel so free. I am so happy. And then I realized that whomever I'm going to meet, I knew I was going to meet my spiritual mentor. And it was a he. And I thought, he's not going to be happy. I can stay and I'm welcomed. It is my home. I feel so at home. However, I didn't finish my reason for being. And so I went deep into my heart, and I actually dropped into my gut. And I thought, I have to, if I'm going to get to go back and finish, I have to come up with something that will work to allow me to go back. And so I went deep, and I knew I had a nanosecond. It seemed to be really short time frame to make up my mind. And so I said, okay, I'll do whatever it takes to get whatever it takes to heal and get whole and to get into my body. And as soon as I made that promise, I just fell from high in the upper atmosphere, just like down that tube of light, back into my body. And you'd think, oh, great. Oh, it was horrible. I had gone from feeling this expansive oneness with the universe and God and all that's good, no memory of anything bad, back into my heavy, literally heavy, because I had gained, 60 pounds while I was sick. My body is so sick. It is so painful. And I just dropped right back into it. It was like crawling into a dead elk carcass on the interstate. It was just horrid. And I'm like, okay, here I am. So for the last 10 years, I have been keeping my promise to do whatever it takes to heal. And that has been an extraordinary journey. Very, very hard, way harder than law school. Hardest thing I've ever done. And I am so grateful to it. I mean, I'm just now starting to get the return payment of living free as soul freedom and light and love and being able to share that. So that is my near-death experience. But I want you to know, I was more alive out of my body. I'm starting to approach that type of sense of freedom and aliveness. At least I have glimpses of it in my body. And I totally believe that my purpose and all of our purposes is to live from that consciousness of oneness that I experienced while we're alive and while we have the body.
Wow, that's incredible. Going back, do you think you voluntarily left the body? Or do you think that, because I've heard of people that maybe died because of grief, because of heartbreak, because their partners left, and so they kind of volunteered themselves. Do you think that's what happened?
Well, I'd had one very close near-death experience. So I don't know if I volunteered. I can tell you, my mom was also suicidal. I would find her with a gun on her leg, threatening to commit suicide. And so there were times in my life where I did not want to commit suicide, but I didn't want to live either. But they're kind of the same thing. I certainly wasn't going to do anything. For me, after dealing with my mom, that was kind of off the charts because I'd already dealt with that and it didn't make sense. But at another level, I was so unhappy here and I really thought God had sent me to the wrong place. And now when I say that, it sounds extremely arrogant, but that is what I thought. So I didn't volunteer, but I'm pretty sure that I was pretty persistent at multiple levels of being that I didn't like it here. I mean, where'd you send me? These people are mean. They do terrible things to each other, to me. It was just, I could not comprehend the pain and how people lived and how people treated each other. And it just was, literally blew my circuits. So I didn't volunteer, but I'm pretty sure my prayer was answered. And I'm so grateful that I was able to come back because I know I would be up, I'd still be accepted. I'd still be in a good place. I'd be loved. But I did come to earth with a purpose. And I now feel like I'm on course to do that. And I suggest to people, don't wait till you die to live. You don't, there's no guarantee that you get to come back. It humbled me to my core to be in that place. And I'm grateful for the experience every day. And I'm grateful to live the life that I have now and to be able to, I wrote a book, I share in my retreats, I teach, I still run the law practice. I have a very good husband. We have a great life on our ranch. I have 6 healing horses. I just feel like my life is abundantly blessed on all levels of being.
It's interesting that you chose to become a litigation lawyer when you grew up on a ranch. I understand from the perfectionism side of things, but it's an interesting choice. What led to that choice?
The first case that I covered, or the case that caused me to go, was in the United States. On our Constitution, it says that the government cannot take property without paying just compensation. Now, we lost our ranch when I was in college, not to a government takings, but we lost it. And so that is one of the other traumas that I had. And that's actually the worst one. It's the only one that I don't remember. I lost time. I don't remember for a certain couple of weeks of my life after that happened. And so for me, true north, to protect other people, protect their livelihoods and their property and them being on the property, that was very easy for me. So I am a bulldog advocate for people and I love it. And I still love it to this day. And I'm aware that at some point, I am 63. I actually look younger after dying than I did before dying. And at some point, I'm not going to be able to keep both businesses going. So I'm going to have to, I'm trying to build up the litigation practice and pass it on. But I still love taking care of my clients. So we'll see how that all unfolds because I'm very dedicated to living what I love. So we'll just see how it unfolds.
Well, there's so many corrupt lawyers, so it's good that you're doing the service on the right side or on the good side.
That is what I'm aware of also. If I don't do it, who will take care of my client? These people. That is heartfelt. That is from deep in my heart. It always has been there. So it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't make sense. But when you look at that, it makes total sense. I also think that I had to develop the discipline and the mental discipline. The more I get deep into the healing and looking at all the stuff about deep psychology and transformation and the spiritual path that goes along with it, I'm aware that that's more innate to me. I'm better at that. And however, it creates a expansion and a spaciousness that is hard to contain. So the fact that I have all those years, and actually I was a blacksmith and a horseshoer before I went to journalism school. So it's very physically hard work and it was working with metal. You got to learn how hot to heat it, where to hit it, how to shape it, and then put it on the horses. So that gave me both of those, the legal profession, the structured thinking, as well as the form, being very anchored in form, helps me now to manifest what's still going on in my being and consciousness as far as transformational healing. There are times where it's all I can do to hold together because I think once we get going and we get in the river of wholeness, of healing, sometimes it kind of runs a little free and it's a little expansion and it's hard physically. I also teach about the 4 lower bodies and that's what I came to heal myself. So to heal and find wholeness, it's like a figure 8. It goes through our heart and above becomes below, and what's below it comes above. So it's an integration. And to do that, we have to have balance in our four bodies. And our four bodies is the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. And I had a horse that symbolized each one of those to me. And they came to me kind of in a certain order. And that helped me heal, because what I told myself is to heal, I have to love myself like I love my horses. That's what I loved most at that time. And that is the key to healing, in my awareness and my experience, is love. And it's an honest love. I mean, I'm now learning that, I've always been loving, but because the other day I talked on a podcast and I said, flight certainly did that as a defense, as a mechanism to not feel and to get away from getting hurt. Certainly did, I would fight, and that, being a lawyer let me, embody that. I said, then there was freeze. I certainly got frozen at times. In fact, when I was sick, my body was frozen. I mean, it was such a lump of clay. And then they talk about fawn. And I said, well, I didn't fawn much. That wasn't really my favorite defense. And since then, apparently I did fawn, because my higher consciousness has been showing me how I fawned. And I fawned by withdrawing. I never really fully embodied myself. I got small. And the way this came to me is I've been in training to be a speaker, an inspirational speaker. And I've been speaking since I was 9. It was certainly on my bucket list to fulfill my reason for being. And when we got on stage and I give my talk, and I did fairly well, and then we're getting our pictures taken and I'm standing next to her, and I just literally went into myself and sucked back and disappeared. And she looked over at me, she says, what just happened? And I'm like, well, and now I didn't get it until just today or yesterday. I'm like, oh my God, that was me fawning. That was my fawn response to my mom of never being big or being fully me, because that could have consequences. And so, my teacher wasn't my mom, but until I healed, everything that was locked inside me, I would project upon anybody who was in a role like that. So I became very familiar learning about what was still inside and how I projected it out. And it's just recently that I'm getting to the place, that Marianne Williamson quote, it's not about, it's about what we fear of how big we are, the power that we have, the beauty, and becoming that. And so for me, shadow work, it's kindergarten to just think about our shadow being all those parts about ourselves that we don't like. There is that. And I've seen parts of myself that have shocked me. I didn't like it all, could go into a shame spiral, and just realize that as part of the healing path, it's like to recognize it, accept it. But it's also equally as important to embody those parts of us that are light and love and are greater than us. And if we see it in someone else, it's highly likely it's actually in us. But the way that I would fawn would be to project it, put it out on someone else. And then if I was in the camera, literally being seen, I would shrink and try to get small. Now I could show up if I were your attorney with armor, but I didn't show up as me. I showed up with armor, my role as an attorney. So all these things, to show up as me and to be seen and to share authentically, has really been my healing path. And it's been, again, harder, but way more rewarding than anything else I've ever done in life.
I'm glad you're sharing this, because I think there's a lot of people watching that can resonate with the same kind of experience. And I think, like you mentioned, empaths with Carl Jung earlier. It's one of the things that empaths do is to adapt to the situation like a chameleon. You have to, you can be the speaker, but only when you're on stage. As soon as you're off stage, you're back to being you.
Yes, and at that time, I was still the wounded child.
Yeah. So I'm going to assume that the horses had a lot to do with your healing, correct?
Oh, yes. I mean, totally. So you want me to share some about that. So before I actually died, I still had my heart horse, Buddy. And he was at that time in his late 20s. So he's pretty old already, but I just love this horse. And it's like we're bonded, soul to soul. And he actually went to this first retreat that I went to. I took my sister. I thought it was for her. And it was the first time I was ever introduced to Equine Gestalt Coaching. And during that retreat, I talked about the childhood sexual abuse, probably only the second or third time in my life. And I was God, I would have been 50 something. So that's a long time to bear that burden of that secret. And during that retreat, there were two other sisters there from Iowa. My sister and I still are in contact with them and do things with them almost every year. Anyhow, they all supported me in doing a process with that. And it just kind of opened me up. And then I go through the near-death experience. I'm not sure if I hadn't had that experience with the horses and with humans supporting me and the coach, that I would have been able to come back. It kind of planted the seed so I had enough strength to want to come back. I'm also aware that at 63, if I got that sick again and died and came back, I am not sure that I could do what I've had to do the last 10 years between now and 73, just because the body gets older and it gets harder. You know, and it's like a combination of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual healing. That was, you know, it was a blessing and a grace of God, and it wasn't easy. It was, you know, maxed me out on all levels of being. Anyhow, so that was after that experience. My next experience with the horses, I had Haas. And Haas was a horse that I bought. He was actually from Ireland. He was imported into the United States. And I would have moments when I was riding Haas at that time, in addition to ranching, and I'd left my rodeo in the past, I was riding English. And so I was doing dressage. And I would have moments with Haas where we'd be so connected that it'd literally be like there was a moment where we were in another realm together. It was connection between us. And I think that there's a place there's like in between the notes in music. It's like when we feel real still, we can get there. When we see something beauty, our deep connection, I also call it the cosmic interval. But I think that's where transformational healing occurs. So after I had been sick, I remembered Haas and that moment that I would have with him where time and space were suspended. And I knew that I had to go back to that moment to heal, to find healing and wholeness. And so I would remember that, because for a while after being so sick, I actually couldn't ride or do a lot outside with the horses. I mean, it took me a couple of years to gain enough health back where I could actually get real physical again and do outdoor stuff. So that was more of the internal awareness of horses. And then once I went to a retreat with the founder of Touched by a Horse, Melissa Pierce. And I actually took a friend there too. You can see my generosity to help someone else is what ended up helping me. And this was a friend who had lost someone to not suicide. Her son had been shot by the police, and she watched him die, and they wouldn't let her go to him. It was a wrongful shooting, and she had been tortured in herself for a couple of years of her suffering from losing her son. And she'd asked me for help. And at that time I was, compassionate, and I had an open heart, but I didn't have many skills. And so I decided to take her to this retreat. And I took her to the retreat, and Melissa Pierce helped her. And that night after she did a process at the Equine Gestalt retreat, she slept for the first time in a couple of years. And so that was really opening to me. But I ended up signing up to learn from Melissa. So I took 4 years of coaching training, and I'm a master Gestalt and an Equine Gestalt coach now. And I had no idea I would love it so much. When I first finished the first 2 years, I immediately held my first retreat. It was for 5 women who lost someone to suicide. And I thought when I first started, it's like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I knew my mind wasn't what I needed to use. So I just decided to be very vertically connected and quiet and still. And I had the most amazing experience. And the women there did too. They were able to move out of that place of pain and the prison of suffering. Because a lot of times when you lose somebody to suicide, you blame yourself. 3 of them, it was their children. And so they all said it was life-changing. And I then was like, oh, I want to do retreats. So I've done 10 since then. And I love doing retreats. My next one is actually the end of the month, September 25th to the 28th. Anyhow, that led to ongoing. So then I took the master's course in Gestalt coaching. And what I learned is my innate understanding of my and others people's, the inner workings. We call it psychology. I think it's more than that. The Gestalt is a German word for wholeness. And that's when things come together for us. And that's what Carl Jung talked about too. It's about wholeness. And so my business is 4 Horses for Wholeness. I love, love, love working on helping my own wholeness, But I'm also aware that me achieving wholeness, and since I now admit that I'm empathic, I didn't really want to for many years. I also am aware that my healing me is very important for me to be an instrument for other people's healing. The way that we actually heal the world and those who even come to us for training or for working with us is we heal ourselves first. And once we heal ourselves, we serve as a tuning fork, and that's very close to what the horses do. The horse's brain is similar to ours and different. So it's similar in that they do have an amygdala, and for them to be good horses, they have to get out of flight or flight. And horses, since they are an animal that is preyed upon by carnivores for centuries, that's their consciousness, it takes them a little bit to trust us. But once they get out of their amygdala, they have a forebrain, but it's not as developed as ours. And so they can't be in two spaces they don't have the duality that we as humans do. So they're here and now. And they also have a very developed, the part of their brain that has to do with perioception, all that's around them. So we think we're empathic. We're chump change compared to horses. Their whole survival depends on being able to read they don't even have to look. They feel what's going on with us. So heart math has measured the emanations from a horse's heart and the same measurements from a human's heart. And a horse's heart pumps it out 5 times greater than ours, up to 60 feet. Now, their heart is like 1% of their body weight. My mare Mystic is 1,700 pounds. So her heart is probably 17 pounds, kind of like a small baby. And our hearts are 0.5 to 0.8 pounds. That's much smaller. And so when they're at peace, when their amygdala is toned down, just what we have to do to actually find our way through healing and wholeness, then they become tuning forks for us to co-regulate with and to learn how to balance ourselves. And if somebody has deep pain, which most of us do, it's kind of the cost of being human. I don't know if everybody has, complex PTSD and that type of trauma, but we all have some type of trauma. And to heal that, almost all the current thinking is, the body speaks first, the body remembers. And so we need to be able to be in our body and be able to feel in our body, and then to feel those feelings and then let them move through us. And then we actually have a transformational healing experience to where we can change. If we don't heal that way, it's like changing the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. We move the chairs around a little bit, and I've done counseling, and it has helped me greatly. And I think there's certainly a role in the healing. And in fact, I'm talking to my counselor later this week. I still use all of the different modalities to heal, but there can be a limited amount that can be done there because it just moves the ideas around, our awareness of ideas. True healing comes from inside and without or up. And so, if you just change the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, it's still going down. It's still going to hit that iceberg and go down. For us, if we don't find what's in our subconscious, unconscious, whatever word you want to use, and understand it and bring it up and then make choices, because oftentimes we get to choose whether we want to keep that old identity, that old way of being. I can tell you, I've cried, I've mourned, leaving behind those ways of being that I'm now shedding, because I'm like, who am I going to be now? I don't know who I'm going to be. I got used to being that person. I got used to having those reactions and defenses. And so it's, the path of healing is an ongoing change. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable. Sometimes some things come up from my past. Like, I didn't know how lonely and how much pain I had as a child until I actually felt it in the last couple of years. And the juxtaposition to now and then, and I would just be like, I just get almost hit, almost like with grief. When you go through a wave of grief, I get hit with this wave of, it's like, oh my God, that's horrible. I could feel it for myself, for my own inner child. But it's a wave, and it's just like grief. Grief, when we have it, you can die of a broken heart. And, you were astute to recognize that all of my damage was around my heart and lungs. It had to do with a broken heart for being alive. And we also can make choices to live and to find our way through that and to get in the flow. I mean, there is so much love available, even on earth and all the twisted stuff that happens. I mean, I truly believe that by doing what I've done to heal and what other people do it themselves, walking our path to wholeness is the way we change, we heal ourselves, our communities, our families, our nations, the country, the world, Mother Earth. All of that, I think, starts with us first. So I kind of went off on a tangent, but I must have wanted to avoid something. If you remember what it was, I'll go back there. But I still have places that I don't want to see, pockets, crevices where pain and stuff is, and awareness is. And my job, I understand from the deep psychology, is the more I can stay totally honest, anchored in my body, and totally honest, and willing to see. There were times in the healing where so much stuff came at me, like I had a really ugly, I don't know, dweller, shadow part, that my mom was very critical and judgmental. And so I took that in from her because I was little and I had no other, that was all I could do to stay alive. So I have this foundation of criticism and judgment. And so I've been on a spiritual path for 40 years. I've done all this stuff with healing, and I think I've got all that figured out, and then I go into this place, and was a recent YouTube channel, and I recorded it, and the person was gracious enough to share it with me. And I watched it. And during the podcast, she had come on and was really gracious, and she looked up to me. And when she did that, I wasn't really ready for that, to be looked up to. So I had a reaction. And when I had the reaction inside, I actually wasn't very eloquent. And I started saying, ooh. And I mean, I literally talked, I don't hardly ever talk like that. And I was watching the video and I was like, oh my God, I used a swear word on myself, hit from the sticks. I can't even talk. I can't even find words. This is horrible. And I literally had all this stuff, my inner, shadow came out and it just dumped on me. And in my mind's eye, I projected it out to say, when my coach sees this is what she's going to think. That's what I told myself. And so I'm like, well, I'm just going to text her and say, we're going to have to kill this because we can't use it. And I did that. So you can see now everything seems pretty good. Everything's rolling along. I'm on a roll. And she looks at it. It was actually Saturday. She doesn't usually work on Saturdays. And she got back to me. She says, Hertha, this is beautiful. That the chemistry between you and the interviewer and what people can learn from it. She says, yes, you can do better with your language and you can learn that and you can get better. But, I don't agree with you. And I literally just got shocked. I just got stopped right there because in my mind's eye, she was going to agree with me. And what she did is totally exposed that part of me, the critical, judgmental part, that shadow. And so I go, oh my God. And I realized, I've learned all this outer stuff now about, how psychology works in the shadow. So I took projections from my mom of criticism and judgment. I took them in, and then I enhanced them. What I put on top of it made it much more twisted. And my mom was pretty twisted. I mean, it was a rank, horrid voice and, swear language, which I don't typically use. And then I wanted, instead of keep it for myself, I wanted to project it to someone else so that, then I could handle it all. And when I saw it, because I'm far enough along on this wrestling match of understanding myself and getting rid of what's unreal and in holding on to what's real, I believed my coach because she's never blown smoke. She's always told me the truth. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. And, it turned out that I agree with her. So I said, okay. And I just dropped it. And that to me was the most, outer manifestation of seeing my own shadow, but also being aware that I didn't have to do it anymore. And as soon as I did that, anybody else I'm in relationship with who had the tendency, now note, if I have that consciousness in me, that allows somebody else to act it out for me. And my husband and I, we had this little place where we'd always get stuck. And I'm not going to go too much into this because that wouldn't be fair to him. But we went to this place and I was like, no, I don't allow myself to have condemnation and judgment. And I'm not going to allow you to have it of me. And quite frankly, I'm not going to allow you to have it of you. I mean, this is a hard line for me. And I was able to draw it. Now, I did lose, for a moment, I lost my stuff. But in the end, it ended up being a very loving conversation and one that we finished in an argument that we'd never been able to finish before. We're not hard arguers, but we've had places where we get to impasse. And so that again to me was like, wow. What I realized from that is that if whatever is not whole in me, it allows somebody else's unwholeness to team up with that, and it causes problem for both of us. So for me, deciding to say no to myself and my own shadow and to just drop it, then allowed, our relationship to come up higher. And we're much closer. And I feel, it's like, wow, I wish I could have done that. We've been married for 16 years. It would have been nice, but it's done now. So those to me are the inner moves of transformational healing. And it comes up physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. For the most part, I don't think the spiritual body is that messed up in any of us. But I think it still goes up and down to that level or across, however our four lower bodies are, the energy is arranged.
Well, I think it's incredible that you had the awareness that it was your own shadow acting out and had nothing to do with you having bad thoughts or not being good enough and all that.
That is the 10 years.
Yeah.
That's the 10 years of work. And the spiritual path for 40 years before that.
Yeah. If somebody was going to go on a path like that and also wanted to learn how to become aware, because I think that's the first step, is to become aware of those parts that are not in alignment, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, first and foremost, I really believe for transformational healing, you do have to have a spiritual path. I am not attached to which one. I mean, I'm open to whatever. I think as souls, we all have we have a homing device inside of us, and our spiritual path will ring true. We can feel it when it rings true, and that's what we need to follow to get home. But we do have to find that and enhance it, because without bringing in more light and having that spiritual connection, I don't think transformational healing can occur. Just my experience. So first and foremost, that's it. And then the next step is, there were times after I first died. Do you guys talk about Kundalini here?
Yeah.
Okay. After I first died and came back, the Kundalini started moving, and there were nights our days, I'd just be like, I'm going to lose my mind. And I'd go back to, when I sit at my desk at work, after 15 minutes, I could go back to being an attorney. But when I wasn't being an attorney, it was kind of free for all. And I was like, oh my Lord. And when that occurred, I got to a place where I was like, okay, I'm not even going to try to figure all this out, because I can't figure it out with my human mind. So I just decided, in my belief system, I have a chart that is on my altar, and it depicts in colors and by symbols who I think I am at a God consciousness. And so I just started saying, when there's all this other stuff would come, blah, 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 I am, okay, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. All I am is my God consciousness. I rest. So I use my legal skills. I rest my case. I'm standing on that evidence, and I believe that. And I'd have to do it over and over again, because obviously there were parts of me that were still open and porous. So there comes a time where we have to do that. But then now I'm called upon to get granular and look in, not just a big picture, but to make choices over and over again. Nope, that's real. That's not real. But it becomes a momentum, just like learning how to be a blacksmith, learning how to shoot free throws, learning how to play the violin. It takes practice. It takes daily practice. And I really believe that more important part of our life, most important part, is to become an Olympian with our daily practices. And some of those practices are spiritual, but they're not just when we do our devotions or when we're with other people. Some people go to church. However we do that, to me, a spiritual path is all the time, because all the time I have to be aware of my consciousness. And so the first, to be able to be aware of consciousness and ideas and start separating out what is an emotion, what is thought, what is a sensation, all these different levels of being and awareness, we have to get really still. And our current culture does not like stillness. And I work with it every day. I have a spiritual practice for a half hour to an hour and a half every morning. I get up at 4 o'clock. so that I can do my spiritual devotions before I go to my day of running 2 businesses and being married and living on a ranch. And people say you're busy. I am busy, but I'm not. I try to be organized and I try to stay in flow without being organized. And I'm probably better at flow than organization, but I do stay in flow. And with that, I can navigate and stay on top. If I try to do it by me, the little me, it's too much. And that's the way I used to do things. And my being won't even allow me to do that anymore. So to heal, to do what we need to do, we need to have a practice. And the practice is, not just for a half hour, but start small. Start with a little thing. And when you want to be aware of what you're thinking, what is a feeling, my coach, Trisha Brook, has actually written a book, and it's going to come out in October, and I'm just reading it. When I have my groups, I will use that to teach from. And it's called being smart is stupid. And she talks about her practice of Buddhism has informed her way of being, and how to be really smart and to find our Buddha, our Buddha mind. People might call it their Christ mind, their higher mind, whatever they want to call it. To me, words don't matter. That you have to be still first. And I agree with that totally. So stillness, and then comes a process of discernment. And for me, when I told God I would do whatever it took to heal, I then was given the assistance that I needed. I happen to believe, again, based on my experience, that healing is not a one-person job. I have to do my work, and I have to be willing to do what I need to do, and sometimes it's lonely because there's a lot of things that happens internally. And I was provided, she, from God, all that I was necessary, to heal. The right medical doctors, the right naturopath, the right homeopathy, the right somatic experiencer, the right relationships. I was given everything that I needed. I just had to be willing to open up. And I can tell you, say, well, how'd you know it was the right thing? Usually it would scare me. And that, yeah, for me, because I was scared of leaving, from my mom instilled terror and fear, abject terror in me because of what had happened. And so for me to address and to go through the aperture and to go through the wound to find wholeness, I had to face my fear. And so that was something that was common. And I don't think it will be the same for everyone, but like the somatic experiencer, for me, somebody who was going to help me get in my body. My number one skill was disassociation and living in my head, so I didn't feel. So I hire her, and she's going to help me get in my body. And so she touched me and talked to me. That was terrifying to me. It was all I could do to stay. And I talked to my therapist, and my therapist said, well, if you don't like it, you can leave. And so every time I go through this fear thing, I'm like, if I don't like it, I can leave. So it seems very simple, but there will be times in the healing process where it is so down to earth, it is so practical, it is so simple, but that's the foundation to be able to build the container that can hold more of our divine consciousness. To me, it's about becoming our divine geometry, who we were created in the beginning, and embodying it. And I'm more of that, but I've had some really mundane, funny moments where it was not a high consciousness. But what is a high consciousness? To me, a high consciousness is being embodied here and now with the greatest amount of wholeness that we can embody. And so the other thing, so what else would be necessary? It's in the Buddhism path, they teach about once you become enlightened, you chop wood and haul water. And I think that that's very true. Whenever I kind of have a breakthrough and I'm like, woohoo, then I'm back down to, cleaning the barn, doing a hard legal case. I'm like, okay, I'm in one of these phases. And so just to keep on moving and to be flexible and to be aware that it isn't, in the past, you could think of monasteries, people went for deep healing and then they would, sit and meditate. I think we're called to live in the world, to be of the world, and to embody that in our daily lives. That's my path and my understanding. So to do that, we need to have a very practical, embodied practice. So for me, my days, there's some things that are non-negotiable. I go to bed at a certain time. and I get up at a certain time so that I, can get enough sleep. And so I get up, I go to bed at 7:30 or 8, and I get up at 4. I sometimes don't get to bed on time. I guarantee you my body will not let me sleep past 4. So, and that's natural. And I wake up and I'm ready to go. And I'm anxious, not anxious, but happy to go do my devotions. Before devotions, I have some quiet time so I can feel and think and know what I need to know for the day. And then I've shed like 30 pounds. I still have more weight to lose, but I'm not focusing on losing weight, because if I did that, I would be restricting. And there's a part of me, after driving myself so hard for all those years, literally to death, my body will not, it will stop. It will say, you will not treat me that way ever again. So I have to treat everything I do has to be with love and compassion. So I do some intermittent fasting. I do eat mostly protein and vegetables. I'm not a vegetarian. I know that for some people on the spiritual path, that's the highest path. It's not great for me as a O negative and living on the ranch and doing all the physical work. So, okay, I've accepted that. And I try to eat a clean diet though, and lots of water. And I don't drink much besides water and some coffee, which, you can make arguments for and against the coffee, but the coffee's still here. And I eat right. I do try to get enough exercise. I go out and do chores and work with the horses and try to keep my body moving, because if the body isn't a clear temple, and if any place I have like physical restrictions, if they're not, related to emotional, and the other thing, if there's anything stuck in us that's not healed, it'll be tangles in our body too. But there's also just how much the body speaks first. The body has to be healthy, and movement is important. So I do different things to get enough movement in my body. I try to keep on top of whether or not I react, to something that happens. I like to respond. So if I need time to think, I need to have time to get still, I'll take that time. And lastly, I'm very careful what I take in, what I hear, what I see. And now I'm not perfect. When I'm working on trial, get ready for trial, which I had a week-long jury trial to get ready for a couple of weeks ago, my body is so overstimulated, and so much of my mental body, that to really find it enough down leveling to sleep, I'll sometimes watch stupid TV. Now it's not horrible TV, because I'm so sensitive now that the images will replay. So I'm careful about that. But I realize that I can't keep doing that. I'm getting to a stage in the healing path and wholeness where I have to come up with some type of more self-mastery so that I can down level to sleep without doing that. But right now, that's still what works for me. And I think for a time for all of us, I did take medication very early on in the healing path. I don't take anything now besides natural stuff. But I think to be rigid is not to heal. We need different things along the path to heal. But we come to a place where to be whole and to live as whole, it is like being an Olympian and daily practices. And they're very mundane practices, but they're the container for us to live as being in balance and to be whole. And I don't think we can live that way unless we build the habits and the daily habits and practices that allow us to have that foundation built.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And you've pretty much covered every angle, and it's all doable. Yeah. Tell me, your pericarditis, is the inflammation gone completely now?
It is. A couple years after that experience, I went back to the heart doctor and the lung doctor. They're independent, so I went to each one of them. And they were pretty sure after I left the hospital that I would have ongoing scar tissue. So problems with my lungs and heart for the rest of my life because of how serious it was. Both of them, no, the scans showed no scar tissue. They were very giddy, very happy. And they said, whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. So that I was, I was given the miracle of coming back, but I was also given the miracle of not having long-standing complications in my body. My body is healthier now than I think any time since I was probably 4 or 5. So I feel better in my body now than since the trauma first happened. And there was something else you triggered. You said about. Oh, it'll come back. Sorry.
It's amazing how something that happened in our first 5 to 6 years of life has to take an entire lifetime to heal.
But maybe that's what the entire lifetime is about.
Maybe.
Do
I
you
just
guys?
think, you know, and we keep healing and we keep learning and we keep becoming more better versions of ourselves because, like you said, we might be chopping wood, carrying water, but we're not the same people doing it.
No. Do you talk about past lives here?
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder, and I kind of believe that, our soul is on a trajectory. And like my psychology in this lifetime is, is for a reason. I believe that I have other times where I did things, that, and I don't, karma to me is just the opportunity to let go of the unreality that I've accepted as my beliefs to get back to the real me, which is my true identity in God, how God created me. And so I believe now, and I'm just now getting to this place, that my mom in that trauma, I don't think that guy was supposed to sexually abuse me. I think that was a play from out of bounds. But my mom, I got her for a reason. And I think that I needed a bad mom for me to deal with my psychology. And I think she went for the Emmy. She could have just been bad. I think that her her stuff got out of hand for her, and that's unfortunate for her, and it has been unfortunate for me until I get to this place. Now it's a blessing because without that, I'm not sure I would have had they say a diamond is created by heat, and friction. I'm not sure I would have had enough heat and friction. I'm pretty stubborn. I can find, and I'm seems to me I have a decent mind, and my decent mind is not always good for me because I can find a lot of ways to avoid, doing what I have done now to find wholeness, to keep my promises to God. And the I having her and having that trauma is now a blessing because what I uh-oh, can you hear that? My dog is howling. Do I just stop for a minute? No?
I don't hear anything. No.
Okay, great. So I believe that what happened to me then is now become it is a deep wound, and I think the core wound is the deepest and the hardest to work with, but it becomes a gateway, a portal to wholeness. And through that, once I get through that and I fully embody the oneness and I shed the defenses and parts that keep me from being whole, then I can be an instrument for change and transformation, on earth and for others. But it's a way different than I used to do it. I mean, it's like to live that way is free. It's also unattached. So it's not a burden. And as far as the being empathic, it changes all the dials. I'm still really sensitive, but I don't take on stuff. I now know where I begin and end. And so that allows me to, I can sit with people in deep pain and wherever they go through. And I'm like in this vertically connected, and I'm with my horses most of the time if we do retreats. And together we hold space, but it is nothing that's dicey or any of that stuff, because my container is whole. And so, and without the childhood wounds and that trauma, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And I love, 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 being alive now and to share what I've learned. And I think I've been gifted with the ability to language the inner moves of transformational healing. And I don't think many people have, that's not their calling. And I think that's my calling. And I think it makes it accessible. And like you said earlier, that it's for everyone. It's not just for people of one faith or people who are rich or people who are this or that. It's for all of us. Anybody who's alive on earth, their path is meant to be, if they choose, a path to becoming whole.
Well, you definitely have the gift of language. I think you've explained it in such a clear way that anybody could understand and feel inspired to do something about it as well, to take action. I wanted to ask you about your relationship. Did it change after your NDE, or what was it the
With my
same
mom,
with your mom and with your husband?
my mom died right before I died.
Okay,
And
that's
I
a
don't
pity.
think Yeah, I actually don't think I could have done the work without that because I was so attached to save, to be in there to save her. I mean, it was a really mixed up relationship. So I think that that was all kind of in God's order. But she was 88. She lived a long life. My husband, absolutely. Now, note that when we first got married, I I certainly always wanted love, but because I had complex PTSD, which I didn't even really know, and him loving me, it put my problems on steroids. I mean, I'm about ready to lose my mind because, it opened the door, letting love in, opened the door and helped me, forced all the stuff that was not love out. So for a while, I kind of went a little bit batshit crazy, and and now, yes, absolutely. And I'm so blessed. My husband is a Montana rancher, and he's moved with me through all of this. I talk and I use words and concepts that sometimes is a little out there for him. But he is a lovely man. He is an anchor. I mean, he's so grounded and he's so good. And that has, without that, I also probably couldn't have healed. And yes, our relationship is better, and I imagine it's going to keep on getting better because the more whole I become and the more able I am to give and receive love that, he just, I told him one time, I said, it's not fair because I have to do all the hard work. And he says, who says I'm not doing work? I'm like, touche.
Yeah. You're already aware of your own work you're doing.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's good to hear because a lot of relationships have gone the other way, which is also fine. You either grow together or you grow apart. And that's
Right.
just life. Yeah. And your litigation practice, that must have changed. Surely the way you approach, yeah, tell me more.
Yeah. So I ran for office once, and the other side was just kicking the crap out of me in the press. And before I went to law school, remember, I was a journalist. So I'm trained to spin. And I wanted to fight back and just pound them. And my husband said, if you fight with a pig, the pig gets dirty and likes it. And I'm like, oh, I'd like it too. But I did what he said, and I did not get, in the mud with the pig. And in litigation, I've always prided myself in that I don't start fights. But if they started the fight, I'm like, bring it on. We're rumbling now. Yes, since dying and coming back, and like a couple of months ago, I was in court and like, okay, I'm gonna go in my new persona, my new person. Like it's not a persona; it's probably the real me. Without my persona is probably the right way to say it. I'm gonna show up that way, and I'm gonna trust that I can defend my client, take care of them, but I can also take the high road. And I was able to do that. But it's hard because lawyers, I mean, there's so much stuff that go on with posturing. And some part of me would like to say it's all the men that do it, but there are women attorneys who are really aggressive and underhanded. So I'm learning how to be whole and have integrity, yet be in a place where there's underhanded tactics and all that. And my job is in that role is to take care of my client. So I am learning how to do that and take care of my client. I guarantee you the juries, just like the horses only really connect to us when we're authentic. So they're authentic barometers. And a jury, just because you're the smartest, most intellectual, the best at the game, they see all that and they don't really like it. They're going to go with who understands the facts, explains the law, but who has the most integrity and who they connect with. And so that I've loved being able to go as the real me and do that. And I so totally love taking care of my clients. So.
It's interesting that you're still in a field where it is so cutthroat because I don't think many people that are empaths would handle that. you know.
There's a part of me that likes to rumble. So, you know, and and it's kind of like come to mama. I mean, it's a little bit twisted. So now I have to make sure that I don't, engage at the same level underhanded, but it's fair game if they're out of line for me to invoke my higher consciousness to try to get justice.
Yeah.
I just can't do it underhanded. So it's but it's an interesting part of self mastery, and I do love that too, because to me, anything that has to do with a challenge, all that competition that I did, it was about me tuning me. I mean, I think I'm like a flute for my higher consciousness. So to figure out how to do that and to do it under pressure and where nobody else is playing by the same rules, it's like I'm really down for that. I dig that a lot, and it's all on my feet. It's all scanning the room, trying to figure out what's the right next move to be able to make the difference, thread the eye of the needle energetically to for justice.
So when are you running for governor?
Not, I'm gonna my role. I've run for office, and I lost, and I also don't think it's so corrupt right now. Anybody who's really good, it doesn't seem like they could win. My goal right now is to spark a revolution for wholeness, one heart at a time, through my writing, my speaking, my seminars, and we'll see what happens after that. But I'm not sure that the political world is it's a world that is pretty clamped down and not very positive right now. So to work there is too limiting.
Well, to be honest, you don't want to play a game that you can't win. It's a game you want to walk away from, because it's a game that actually takes people away from who they are. So why be part of it? Yeah.
That is how I feel right now. It's not forever. I mean, I don't know what's going to come up next. I do know that I am dedicated to, some people say lay down their life. I laid down my life, so I'm going to raise up my life, to follow a path that makes a difference so we can bring freedom, soul freedom, and goodness, to the earth. And I'm very attached, to government, and that is being a place of higher order. But right now, that's not where we're at. So that's not where I'm playing.
Well, you've got so much going on that you've got a lot of things you can choose from. And you'll find what works for you.
I believe that.
Yeah. Tell me, Hertha, where can people get hold of you if they want to join your workshops or learn more about you?
Yes, I have a website, and it's herthalund.com. I also am going to be offering the first time I've done group offerings for Zoom groups starting October, I think it's 2nd, for 6 months. Maybe it's October 1st. I can't read without my glasses. And it'll go for 6 months until March. And that offering is $2,500. But if they want to type in Natasha, I'll have it set up. They get $500 off. And that will be a Zoom group where we go through Gestalt. I'll offer my Gestalt services. And then I will also teach about transformational healing. So it's for those people who want to, not rely on something outside of themselves to heal, and to learn how to tap into their inner selves and to find that inner voice and that inner way for their path to wholeness and healing. And then I also have a book, Alchemy of Resilience. And I have a free offering on the website that is my touchstones. It's a masterclass, touchstones to the way to transformational healing. It's got 5 touchstones. And that's to embody presence, heal thyself, unlock the energy in your body, what you think matters, and then how to create a light-filled life. We'll obviously be using those touchstones in the group together, the Zoom group. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me. There's also a place on my website if you just want to talk. I give everybody a free call if they want to talk and see if there's anything that I can do. And even the call itself, I would hope would help you move along your path towards wholeness, because that is my mission. So there's a place there where you can sign that up, and I would love to talk to you. So that's probably the ways. And I do have one space open yet in the retreat, September 25th to the 28th, if this gets out ahead of that time. That's a lot to do to be able to get here. But if somebody feels called, I'd love to talk. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today and to share. I feel very, my heart is full.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I will post all your links below as well. Before we go, do you have a message for our viewers?
My message is that healing and wholeness and oneness with our higher beings is everybody's path, regardless of where we're born, what our religion is, any of that, where we live. That I think is our reason for being, and it's available to all of us. And it once we start walking that path, things happen. It's kind of like, they have those books, Think and Grow Rich, and they talk about how we can manifest abundance. The real abundance is the alchemy of uncovering our true selves and embodying that. And so that's available to all. And when we do that, I think it was Gandhi who taught, the way we change the world is change ourselves first. And I really believe that if you don't like what's going on around you in the government or your community, your family, the first person is to change is yourself. And when we each do that, we become, whether we talk or not, we become like this invisible force for good that will automatically raise life around us. And that's how we bring in an age and a world that we can love and love to live in. And I hope to see it in my lifetime. And I don't know how many of us it takes, but I do believe it's possible. And I'd like to invite everybody to start their own path to wholeness. Don't start tomorrow, start now. That's how we get things done, as we start now. That's a practical part of it. So thank you.